morning. It's August 1st, Saturday, and it is hot outside, over 100 degrees, I think. So I am not going outside today. It's better to stay in the basement. And I've been in a little funk, well, a big funk lately, kind of depressed and just down in the dumps, which I'm sure everybody can relate to with the current situation. But today I woke up feeling better. And I thought, boy, I haven't told a story for a while, and I need to at least reminisce about an awesome trip to cheer myself up. So I thought I'd share a story many years ago. In 1984, we were living in San Francisco. Adam was 2. We never went anywhere. We didn't have any money, but we heard about this $500 round-trip flight from San Francisco to Australia. And there was a new airport in Cairns, and we started dreaming that maybe we could take a trip. And of course, you know, Adam had never even been on a plane, but we managed to scrape together the money to go on this trip, and Steve got 4 weeks off, which was amazing, but it's a long trip. So, you know, we'd been telling everybody we were gonna go, and we were going to be gone for a month, and people would say, oh, are you taking Adam? And I was like, of course we're taking Adam. But he would kind of look up at me and like, oh, you know, I hope you're going to take me. And the day we got on the airplane, he turned to me and he said, Mommy, I want to go on the big boy potty. And I went, oh, really? Because he had no interest in potty training. He was over 2, and I would just say, everybody's going on the potty. And he'd say, so what? Like that. And so anyway, he was so happy we took him on this trip, I think, that it was rewarding us. And I brought along big boy pants, you know, hoping, but after he used the bathroom on the plane, he never had an accident after that. And he was pretty proud of himself. And so if you're having trouble potty training your children, you might consider a really fantastic trip somewhere. And they may reward you with something like that. So we get to Australia. We're on the east side of Australia. Our friends Nikki and Charlie lived in Perth, which is on the opposite coast. But we were exploring this whole wonderful continent of Australia. It was fantastic, and everything was new, and the people were wonderful. And one day we went to this place called Croc World. And it was like a Crocodile Dundee kind of deal with Steve Irwin types, you know, and the khaki, and really excited about all the wildlife and the plants. We were there, and they were telling us they had crocodile displays everywhere. And they tell you about, you know, all the crazy things in Australia that only exist there, and how a lot of it's just a lot about the intrigue and danger of Australia. They have more poisonous snakes. They have, you know, these crocodiles, of course, you know. One of the crocodiles I remember, he was supposedly the biggest crocodile, you know, in the world, in captivity anyway, and his name was Sarge. And he was about as big as a Volkswagen, you know, I mean, he was huge. And the guy was telling the story of how they discovered Sarge. There was a guy walking on the beach with his little dog, I think they called it Fifi, walking along the beach, and the guy happened to turn his head and look at something, and he looked down, and little Fifi was gone, and Sarge was at the end of the leash. So that was pretty shocking, and they captured Sarge, and so where he couldn't, you know, eat any more children or puppies, and he was at Croc World now, and so we were seeing him, and we were watching them throw meat out on a rope, you know, and into a big pond and wrestle all these crocodiles, and they'd say stuff like, you know, the crocodile will take you down and stuff you under a log, and then he'll come back at some point, you know, for his dinner. But you know, you got to be careful when you're out there swimming. You never know what's going to end. The snakes, and so, you know, we're really excited by it all, but it's kind of scary, and I kind of thought maybe Adam shouldn't be hearing all of this, but he was quite fascinated by it all. In fact, I remember they even said, we have plants that'll kill you, bushes and shrubbery, you know, and he said, we got a plant called the stay-a-while plant, and you might be on a bit of a walkabout and get tangled up in the thorns, and the more you struggle, the more you stay a while, and they'll find your bones in there. And so, we realized that this trip, we got to be on our toes, because anything could happen. So then another day, we go to this place called, I don't know, it's like Australia, there was all the animals of Australia. And we paid quite a hefty price to get in there. And Steve, I remember, had bought me a new camera. It was an Olympus. And I had a bad habit of breaking all of our cameras and dropping them. And, so I'm being really careful with this camera and taking pictures constantly. It was just, everything was so, fantastic. So we get into this place. It's kind of like a Disneyland kind of thing. And spent like $100 or something. And we walk in, and the first thing we see are these kangaroos hopping around, just out there hopping around, and it's so exciting. And you could buy a little bag of pellet type food to feed them. And they just seem so friendly and nice, and so Adam's just, wanting to feed them, and we buy him a little bag of food, and he's holding the food, and the next thing you know, all these kangaroos hop up around him, kind of encircle him, and then they're looking at me and looking at him, and so I get the camera out, I'm like, oh God, honey, this is gonna be a great picture. So as I'm getting down and getting the picture all lined up, I see the kangaroos, which were quite bigger than Adam, stop looking at me and start looking down at Adam and the food, and then all of a sudden they just go, wah, and grab him and grab the food and rake their claws down his arms, and he is just hysterical and screaming, and I'm being like, oh my God, and I get him, and we, carry him away, and he's like, I don't want to be here, I want to go. And Steve's like, we're not leaving, we just spent, $100, and so we're trying to calm him down, and he's just like, and he's not hurt too badly, but, I thought, what kind of an idiot am I? I think these kangaroos could knock him out, So, he calms down a little bit, and at one point he's still kind of, so Steve's holding him and kind of, patting him, and he sees this big log where you could go sit, and so he went and sat down on one end of the log, and he's kind of consoling Adam, and he's kind of calming down a little bit, and then I'm sort of standing away from this whole thing, and I see on this log, at the other end of the log, is some kind of bird. I don't know, he's got his head down, it looks like he's sleeping, and I thought, well, this would be a good picture, So I squat down to take the picture, and I go, Steve, look at me, and they kind of both turn and look at me, and Adam's not really smiling, but Steve's got a big smile on his face, and I go to line up the shot, and all of a sudden I realize that this bird at the end of the log is aware that we're there, and I see his eye kind of pop open. And then he just takes his head out from under his wing, and he's got this big long beak, and he goes, wah, like that, and looks like he's gonna attack him. And Steve slid down the length of the log, of course he has shorts on, and falls off on the ground holding Adam. His legs are all scratched up, and Adam's screaming again, saying, I wanna go! And Steve's kind of thinking, I wanna go too, but that $100 is a lot of money. So anyway, we decide we need to go somewhere a little more, aimed at little kids. And so we hear about this place called Wallaby World, where the wallabies are a lot smaller. So we thought, okay, that's probably going to be okay. So we're walking over there, and Adam's still crying, and I'm kind of walking ahead of them into this enclosure, and all of a sudden a bird just comes by me and squawks, and I go, ah! And I throw the camera up in the air, and it comes down and hits the ground, and the back pops open, and these are, film cameras, and I grab it and I slam it shut, and there's sticks and leaves, sticking out of the camera, and I'm like, oh no. And then Steve goes, oh God, you broke another camera, and he grabs it from me, and I take Adam, and I'm like, I'm sorry, and I'm consoling Adam, and he's kind of squatting on the ground, trying to pull the sticks and leaves out of the camera. And I'm, and Adam's kind of like, Daddy, and I'm patting Adam, and then he says, Karen, what is it? And I look over, and he's squatting, and there's this giant bird that is standing behind him and got his whole head. It's a cassowary bird. They're huge, like an emu, and they're weird. And they have these weird, big, fluffy heads, and they're black and gray, and they're huge, and they have long legs. And he's like curious about Steve, and he's kind of leaning over him. And Steve goes, "What is it, Karen?" And I go, "It's a big bird." And he goes, "Is it gonna bite me?" And I go, "I don't know." And then the bird's going like, "Wah, ah," and Steve's trying to walk away from this bird, and it's just following him. And Adam's crying, "Daddy!" And so it kind of cut our trip short a little bit. We were just a bundle of nerves, and we all were ready to get out of there and screw the $100. We just felt like this was not a good idea. So we leave, and we get in the car, and we're driving home. And Steve said, "Hey, I heard about this really cool place with a lot of rocks where you can go swim and jump off the rocks and go swimming." And it was hot, so I said, "Okay." So we drive to this place these guys had told us about, and we're sitting on this big rock, by the water, and it's just beautiful. And so Steve's, strips down to his shorts, and so he jumps in the water, and he's swimming around, and he's, loving it, and just playing around in the water, and Adam's kind of calming down. And at one point I thought, well, maybe he would want to get in the water with Steve. And then all of a sudden Steve starts screaming, and he's like, "Ah, something's biting me!" And there were a couple guys farther down from us go, "Oh, mate, there's biting fish in that water." And Steve's like walking on water trying to get out of there. And once again, Adam's crying, "Daddy!" So Steve managed to get out. He wasn't bleeding or anything, but boy, you would have thought there were piranha in there or something. So anyway, all those images of the nasty things that could kill us were coming to mind. So yeah, we headed back to our hotel or wherever we were staying, and just kind of stayed inside the rest of the day, like I'm doing now. And but it makes me laugh to think about it now. We might have a few scars from that trip, but they're happy memories. And so I know we can't go to Australia right now, but I hope you have a good day. And I miss all my mates, especially my ones in Australia, and but all my mates. And I hope you're staying well and trying to be optimistic, and just be kind to yourself and to others. Wear your masks, then we can get outside again. And just know I love you all. Okay, ta-ta.